She said I was too stable, that she needed excitement, but now she's pregnant and wants a chance. My girlfriend left me because I was too stable and she needed excitement. But now that she's pregnant, she has come back looking for me because she feels safe with me. These past few years have been the most difficult, challenging, and stressful of my life. I went from having everything planned, with clear expectations for the future, to being abandoned by the woman I thought I would build a family with. However, now that I look back on it, I can't help but feel pleased. I'm better off than I ever would have imagined, and above all, I'm free of a woman who would have only brought me trouble. I was in a relationship with Yolanda for almost 10 years. We shared a rented apartment and lived a fairly peaceful routine. That's why, when she came home to the apartment one day and told me she wanted to end the relationship, it was so unexpected, so sudden, that at first, I thought it was a cruel joke. It left me completely stunned and confused. We didn't have any serious problems, we weren't distant, we hadn't argued about anything that would justify such an abrupt turn. If we had been going through a rough patch, maybe I could have understood it, but that wasn't the case. Everything was fine, or at least that's how I saw it. I'm not exaggerating when I say this. We had several projects in the works. For months, we had worked on them with discipline. About 6 months before she broke up with me, we had taken the first step toward our dream of owning our own place. We found an opportunity in a building under construction that would be ready a year later. We took advantage of a pre-sale discount and paid a down payment of $20,000, $10,000 each. It was the result of years of saving, sacrifices, and responsible decisions. After that, we spent 6 months paying the monthly installments, always splitting it 50-50ths. It was a long-term plan that we were both excited about. All of those things were fresh in my mind when Yolanda left me. I remember every word she said to me that night. I can still hear her calm tone, as if she had practiced it several times in front of the mirror. Don't take this the wrong way, but I've realized that I'm never going to grow with you. You don't motivate me. You're too calm. Those phrases hit me harder than I want to admit. I didn't understand what they were supposed to mean. How could that prevent her from growing? I asked if she was serious, hoping she would take it back, but she just reaffirmed what she had said. I love you, but I can't be fully myself with you. You're too stable, and I need something more in my life. She pronounced the word stable as if it were something despicable, almost as if she were ashamed of being in a relationship without chaos. Then she went on to explain that it was for the best for both of us, that she had to think about herself, that she couldn't let the past hold her back. I just listened, unable to process anything. A month earlier, I had bought an engagement ring. I had the idea of proposing to her on our 10th anniversary, which would have been in 2 months. But there she was, breaking up with me as if it were nothing. In that state of desperation, without thinking clearly, I went for the ring box I had hidden. I knelt in front of her and, with a trembling voice, I said, "Then let's leave the past behind. Let's start a new chapter. Will you marry me?" I'll never forget her reaction. She had an expression of disgust, as if I were ruining a carefully crafted plan. She shook her head over and over, as if wanting to escape the scene. "Don't do that, get up. Don't make this harder than it already is." That sentence broke me. If there was a lower moment than that, I hadn't known it yet. But still, I tried one last thing, one last desperate card. And the apartment. We have to pay for it together. It's in the contract. It belongs to both of us. You can't just leave. That's when she lost her patience with me, as if I were the one acting out of line. You just don't get it. I don't want anything to do with you anymore. I don't care about the apartment. I don't want to know anything else. Do whatever you want, but leave me alone. She said it just like that, without thinking about the consequences, not the years of work, not the sacrifices, not the money, not anything. She just gathered some of her most important things. Before leaving, she told me she would come back later for the rest. That moment was the lowest point of my life, not just because of the nearly 10 years of a relationship that had been thrown away, but also because of the friendship we had for a long time before that. We were both 28 at the time, and to this day, I still don't understand what got into her head. Some people told me that maybe she felt a panic because she was approaching 30 or that she thought she had to take advantage of her youth. I never knew the truth. The days that followed were hell. I couldn't work properly, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. At night, I would lock myself in the apartment, staring into space, with no energy to talk to anyone. The only person I told what happened was my best friend, Jorge. He literally held me up when I couldn't do it myself. He stayed with me for several days, forced me to go out, and helped me tidy up the apartment. Moreover, he was the one who insisted I get a lawyer to handle the situation with the apartment. He explained that even if she refused, legally she was still listed as an owner and responsible for the debt. If I wanted to pay for it all myself, I needed her to waive her rights and responsibilities in writing. Jorge even took it upon himself to talk to her. When Yolanda came back for her things, he told her she needed to meet me at a notary's office a few days later to sign the documents. She didn't argue. She just accepted dryly, as if she didn't care. And that was the last time I saw her for almost 2 years. The day we met before the notary and signed the waiver, she signed over her rights to the apartment, freeing herself from any future obligations. It was a formal procedure, but for me, it marked the definitive end of our story. On one hand, it benefited me enormously because I became the sole owner. On the other, I also became solely responsible for the monthly installments. And that was my next problem. I was just beginning to recover from the emotional disaster Yolanda had caused when I realized I had to pay the full apartment installment on my own. It was then that I understood that in a matter of months, I would run out of savings, unable to pay both the installments and the rent. And that situation had to be maintained for at least another 1.5 years until I could move into the new property. And to top it all off, just as I was trying to get back on my feet, news of Yolanda's new life started to reach me. Not even a week had passed since she broke up with me when she was already posting stories from parties, surrounded by people I didn't even know, with the typical messages we've all seen at some point: you only live once, so you have to enjoy it, better in bad company than alone, things like that. Soon enough, a couple of friends told me she was dating another guy. I don't know if they started seeing each other before or after the breakup, but deep down, it didn't matter. The only thing I thought was that, in the end, this must have been what I was preventing her from doing, not being with other people, not having the freedom she claimed to need so much. All of this forced me to take action because I understood then that she didn't care about the apartment, our plans, or the life we had built. And if I didn't do something, I would lose everything I had worked for years. But understanding it was one thing, getting the money to keep up the payments alone was another entirely. My first option was to talk to my boss. I asked for a raise or more hours, some kind of adjustment that would allow me to increase my income, but I got nowhere with that. He was a difficult, proud man who enjoyed being in control. As soon as he heard what I needed, he told me it wasn't possible, that the company wasn't in a position to give raises, that he couldn't just invent money. There was no room for negotiation. After that, I started cutting costs wherever I could. The first thing I did was move back to my parents' house to save on rent. It wasn't ideal, because I still had to face the apartment payments, but at least it took one monthly burden off my shoulders. My parents welcomed me without questions. They offered me their home, their food, and even some money when I needed it. However, even with their help, the situation became unsustainable. After 6 months, I was at a breaking point. I had sold many of my belongings, I was using whatever was at my parents' house, and my savings account was at zero. My mother had even lent me money to cover a particularly heavy installment. It was at that moment that I calmly reviewed my finances and accepted the obvious: that apartment was out of my reach if I stayed at the same job. There was no way to keep it long-term on my own. But the idea of giving up the apartment bothered me more than I can describe. I felt that if I gave it up, I would be handing Yolanda a victory, that her impulsive decision would destroy a dream we had built together. And that feeling is what pushed me to make a decision I had never seriously considered. I decided to risk everything. I started looking for a new job, a better paying one that would allow me to keep up with the installments without depending on anyone. I knew what my boss was like. I knew that if he found out I was sending out resumes, he could use it against me and even fire me. But I also knew that if I stayed there, I would never get ahead. It was either take the risk or lose everything. There was another risk, not finding anything and ending up unemployed. But I kept telling myself that I had experience, that I had worked hard, that my skills were valuable. So I aimed high. I didn't look for small improvements. I sent applications to large companies with much higher salaries than mine. I wanted something that would completely change my situation. To my surprise, a week later, one of those companies called me. They wanted to interview me. They scheduled me for a morning during a workday, which forced me to ask for time off from my current job. I ended up being honest with my boss. I told him I needed the morning off. He, as always, reacted with disdain. He asked if I was planning to go to a job interview somewhere else. I said yes. His response was direct. If you're not at your desk at your scheduled time tomorrow, consider yourself fired. I thought about it all night. If I went to the interview, I would lose my current job, but staying meant losing the apartment, losing years of effort, and also being stuck with a boss who already knew how to pressure me. In that moment, I understood that I had no other choice. I had to take the risk. At 10 a.m. the next day, I was sitting in the reception area of the other company, waiting for my interview. It was then that I got a message from my boss: "Come in tomorrow to sign your papers and pick up your severance pay." I blocked him without a second thought. I could only focus on what was ahead of me. The interview went very well. I connected with the HR manager. I felt she understood my motivations, my experience, and my goals, but still, at the end, she just gave me the typical line, "We'll call you." 2 weeks later, I was unemployed, living with my parents, with installments I could only cover for a few months with my severance pay. At the same time, I saw Yolanda continuing to post photos of parties, trips, and now, a new boyfriend. It was one blow after another, but I couldn't afford to stop. I kept sending out resumes every day. I got a temporary job at a bar at night. I slept little, worked as much as I could, and every cent I earned was saved so I wouldn't fall behind on the payments. Sometimes I wondered if it was all worth it, but I didn't let that thought grow. I had a goal, and I had to reach it. Until one Monday morning, I received an email from the company where I had interviewed. The manager wanted to meet with me for the final stage of the process. 3 days later, they offered me the job. I don't know how to describe that night at my parents' house. It was as if a weight had been lifted from my chest. My salary practically doubled, and the opportunities for growth were much greater. Still, the following months continued to be difficult. I had to maintain a very strict balance to avoid falling behind, but I finally made it. I will always be grateful to my parents for their support, not just financially, but emotionally. The day I moved into my apartment, which I now fully owned, I felt like I had crossed a finish line that once seemed impossible. Nearly a year and a half of constant worry had passed, but there I was, with my accounts up to date, no savings, yes, but also no debt and not depending on anyone else. For months after moving in, I was completely relaxed one afternoon, recovering from work, when there was a knock on the door. When I opened it, I came face to face with Yolanda, smiling as if nothing had happened. It had been almost 2 years since she left me to go enjoy life, and she had changed. She had very short hair, a nose piercing, and was dressed more daringly than before. But you could also see the gray hairs. She was 30 now, with some silver strands on one side. She also had pronounced lines around her eyes. She had aged, a consequence of her new life, I suppose. She tried to walk into the apartment as naturally as someone visiting an old friend, but I didn't let her. I stood firm in the doorway and asked her what she wanted. She replied with a smile. Come on, don't be like that. I heard you moved out of your parents' house, and I wanted to see the apartment. After all, it belongs to both of us, doesn't it? That made me realize she had also been keeping tabs on what I was doing, but I didn't move from the doorway, I just looked at her. When she saw I wasn't going to let her in, she fell silent. So I repeated my question, what exactly did she want? When she started to cry, I was no longer surprised. Her reaction was quite exaggerated, covering her face with her hands, taking deep breaths as if she were on the verge of collapse, and moving closer to me as if expecting me to hug her. But it didn't move me in the slightest. It wasn't hatred or resentment, it was simply that I no longer recognized her. It was like watching a stranger imitate someone I once loved. Finally, she started talking. She said she had made a terrible mistake by breaking up with me, that she had been confused, that she had been looking for things that didn't give her what she expected. She assured me that now, after all this time, she had realized that the only moments in her life when she felt calm and secure were the ones we shared together. That now she felt alone, vulnerable, and directionless. She said all of this through tears, looking at me as if she expected me to feel something akin to compassion. But I was no longer in that place. I decided to be clear from the start. Yolanda, you have no idea how much my life has changed since you left. I feel good now, better than ever. And to get to this point, your absence was necessary. I don't need you. And to be honest, you would make me feel insecure. We will never get back together. She began to cry even harder, as if my words were a blow she hadn't expected. And what about the ring? She asked me. You asked me if I wanted to marry you. I was confused then and I got scared by your proposal, but now I'm ready. I want to get married. I know you're the one. We should be together. That ring was one of the first things I sold when I started running out of money, so I didn't even consider her words. And when I saw she had nothing more to say, I simply closed the door. I thought that would be enough for her to understand, but I was wrong. It wasn't the last time she came looking for me. She started showing up from time to time. One night she arrived with food and a bottle of wine. She said she just wanted to smooth things over, that she didn't see why we couldn't be friends. I refused point blank. I told her I was fine, that I didn't need more friends, and that I saw no point in faking a closeness that no longer existed. Days later, she insisted again. She wanted to invite me to dinner as if we just needed to talk things out. Then she went to my parents' house, imagining she would find support there, but they knew perfectly well everything that had happened. She didn't find what she was looking for. And I kept the words of my friend Jorge in mind. From the beginning, he had said, she wanted to have fun, enjoy her life, live without responsibilities. Now that she's done that and realized what she's worth to others, she wants to come back to what's safe. According to Jorge, some people had told him that Yolanda had been with several guys, but nothing serious worked out with any of them. None of them saw her the way she wanted to be seen. They treated her as a good time, someone for a night or a weekend, but nothing more. Her new group of friends considered her fun, but never stable. Never someone for a commitment. The next time Yolanda showed up at my apartment was the last time I tolerated it. I had had enough and told her directly that if she kept coming without my permission, I would get a restraining order, that she wasn't welcome, that I never wanted to speak to her again. But her response was what truly surprised me. I paid half of the down payment and 6 months of installments for this apartment that only you are benefiting from. That's not fair. I have the same rights as you. And if you don't let me in, I'm going to sue you. Don't make me, because I will. I didn't bother to argue. I slammed the door in her face. She started shouting that she would sue me, that she wouldn't let me steal what was hers, that she wasn't going to let me keep everything. It was as if she had erased from her mind the fact that she herself had signed away her rights in front of a notary. She yelled for a while, but when she saw I wouldn't open the door, she left. A couple of weeks went by without her returning. I thought she had finally gotten the message. Until Jorge gave me the news that explained everything that was happening. Yolanda was pregnant. That was the real reason for her desperation to get back with me, for her constant visits, for her attempt to get into the apartment, for her sudden interest in reclaiming something she had abandoned almost 2 years ago. She didn't know who the father was, she had no stability, no formal partner, and all of that coincided with the fact that I suddenly represented exactly what she had lost: stability, security, and a home. Finding that out was the final confirmation I needed. Yolanda breaking up with me 2 years earlier was, without a doubt, the best thing that could have happened to me. It was hard to move forward, difficult to recover, painful to rebuild everything alone, but every step was worth it. I'm in a much better place now than I would have been if we had stayed together. I wouldn't have changed jobs, I wouldn't have grown as I did, and there would always be the doubt of what she would do next. What impulsive decision could ruin this life? So now that she is out of my life, I just hope she stays that way far away.